Good morning and welcome to the October action agenda meeting of the Commonwealth Transportation Board. Before we start, let me again thank Dixon and Kay for a wonderful evening last night. Very nice evening. And appreciate all the drivers we had going through the storm, getting us to the various places last evening. And I know, Charlie, probably some of them were up late last night. We're clearing roads and stuff. So they were up doing that. Also wanted to mention, you probably noticed that they had some flooding here in the hotel, but they've worked all night, and I believe everything is going to be good. We'll talk about the conference after we finish up this meeting, but want to thank all the hotel employees and all the staff at the conference, and Carol and her team here for basically being up most of the night. Getting everything ready for us to start on time. A lot of rain through here, and I guess you now know what coming off these mountains where that rain goes to the low spot and what could happen. So, but it looks like everything's going to be on target. All right, so the first action item today is for public comment, and the first speaker I have signed up is Jim Foley with the mayor of Ashland. And I would just remind our speakers, we are limited to 3 minutes. And anybody who's going to want to speak, even if you haven't signed up, will have the opportunity. So, Mr. Mayor, good morning this morning.
Good morning. Thank you, Secretary Lane, members of the CTB, staff, Jennifer Mitchell, thank you very much. I'll be under 3 minutes, no problem. Thank you for your continued efforts addressing the Ashland-Hanover portion of the DC to RVA. This past Friday evening, Town Council passed a resolution. You'll get a copy of that. But I wanted to just give you the main points right now. We adamantly oppose a third track through the middle of town, whether at grade or in a shallow trench. Our narrow right-of-way dates from 1838, and with a single track running through town, and is far too small to accommodate a third track. I think this board understands that point, thanks to your visit 1 year ago. And again, I thank you for coming out last year, I'm sorry. Quick note on the trench, it's a devastating choice for the town. The option came about very late in the process, just 2 months ago. Is not even mentioned in the draft EIS. With so little study, I don't see how you could possibly recommend this option, but just want to make sure you understand that if you do think about it, look at our September 16, 2017 work session. DRPT did a great presentation to the community, and people went in there with an open mind, and they came out shaking their heads at how devastating it would be to the town. So if you think the trench is not devastating, please look at that video. But if you're not considering it, you can save yourself an hour and a half. The 323 remains on the table. It's very appealing, will unite the community, but we simply cannot support it right now. We believe Ashland will be a bottleneck through the town, and a detriment to the state's, Commonwealth's future. And we are that choke point, and we recognize that, and we understand the economic progress of the Commonwealth could be impacted by it. And the 323 simply kicks this down, the can down the road for 20 or 30 years. A future CTB will face this bottleneck, and how are they going to respond? All the construction is going to be done to the bypass. Development will be done to the east and the west, so there will be no bypass options in the future. So a future CTB is going to say, well, we only have one choice through the middle of town, even though we know it will be devastating. For this reason, we've taken the very unpopular position of advocating for the western bypass now. It's the only viable option on the table that addresses the ultimate and inevitable rail congestion. My final point, once the DC to RVA ends with a record of decision, let's not wait 20 or 25 years to discuss other alternatives. Let's do that now. There may be a cloud of uncertainty over the homeowners along the tracks or in the western bypass. I implore you to start exploring those options now. If you do choose the 323, please consider adding language acknowledging the narrow right-of-way through Ashland. That would do a lot to protect us in the future, because we may not have a future board that will come and visit us and see firsthand what it is. So that's really our major ask. Thank you very much for all you do.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Any other comments this morning from the participants in the audience? Mr. Pollard, good morning.
Trip Pollard with the Southern Environmental Law Center. Number of significant items that you all discussed yesterday and on your agenda today. I just want to touch briefly on a few of those. First, DC to RVA, we believe should be a top priority for the Commonwealth, as should addressing the bottleneck at Long Bridge. We appreciate DRPT's ongoing efforts at outreach and updates and urge DRPT as well as this board to continue to focus on keeping service as much as possible within the existing lines and on minimizing harm to environment and cultural resources. On the P3 manual revision that's before you today to vote, it definitely is an improvement over the current manual in a number of important ways, especially addressing the need to fully develop the public option alternative. And we saw with I-66 demonstrated Exhibit A why that is so important. We would not have gotten the deal we got without maintaining that public option, and hats off to you, Mr. Secretary, and the board for sticking with that. And that's, I think, the most important change in the P3. I think there are a number of other things that could use some tweaking in there, especially concerned some about the role of the CTB and the steering committee. I think the CTB should have at least one approval checkpoint. In the manual, as it's changed, you all would not necessarily have any approval checkpoint anymore as a body. Also, I think should make clear that the steering committee receives a briefing and offers recommendation during the project identification and screening process at that phase. And our third suggestion on the P3 manual is to retain the procedural safeguard that's in there now, that the CTB has to approve and have a resolution to continue if you only have one responsive submittal to an RFP. The draft would drop that, and I think we might regret that if that goes away. So those are just a few suggestions. We submitted much more detailed comments. And turning briefly to Smart Scale, again, we submitted more detailed comments. Again, a number of changes. And again, overwhelmingly positive. Hats off again to the staff. You know, we're learning as we go along with each of these phases and improving it. I did want to flag for maybe for the future, we need to, I think, strengthen some of the public input provisions a little bit or clarify some of those. The other thing that needs to really be addressed still is the environmental factor, which is largely based on other factors, a chunk of it, which doesn't make sense to me. So we've wrestled with this a little bit. I think there's a better answer out there. I think that's going to be something, though, for another day. You're not going to figure that out before you vote today. So I see I only have 20 seconds. Charge through those real quickly. That's what I wanted to cover that was on the agenda. However, with your indulgence, if I could have a couple of minutes, I wanted to address some overall things as well. So those are a couple of policy points of great concern to us. As all of you know, we've followed, and I've spoken before you all a number of times, but stepping back from particular policies or VTrans or things that we fund, Mr. Secretary, I thought your remarks yesterday about the importance of keeping in mind the amount of resources we have, being wise stewards, recognizing we can't just pave our way out of problems, but that we need to look at more balanced multimodal solutions is right on target. Hope you all have a briefing on this, but very good news on the 29 Solutions project and how their performance has already been very successful. And on 81, I feel like there's a combination of amnesia, political gamesmanship, maybe insufficient education. I think you were being very kind on some of this yesterday. But, you know, we've been down this path of focusing on big picture, substantial widening, and we wasted several years of addressing the real problems on 81. We totally agree 81 needs to be fixed. It needs a lot of solutions already through Smart Scale. You all have some really good targeted projects are in the pipeline. But we need to continue to pursue that balance of targeted solutions to the problems on 81, which are very serious. Things like improving some of the interstates, spot improvements, targeted climbing lanes, and also things like enforcement of speed limits. So, you know, I think that that approach really makes the most sense. And in Southwest Virginia, with Coalfields Expressway, that brings me to that, which is really what I wanted to say a little bit about. No secret to many of you, we aren't big fans of the Coalfields Expressway project. It's over $1 billion, would have significant environmental damage and next to no transportation merit. However, we did not oppose completion of the Corridor Q because we think the bridge to nowhere makes no sense, and you need to have that completion date, although we have some issues with the details of how it's done. What really incensed me, and I wanted to say a little bit about it, was the recent reports in the paper and the attacks, frankly, because that's what they are, and allegations against you, Mr. Secretary, on Coalfields Expressway. Due to my and our SELC's concern with that project, I've followed very closely legislation in the past few sessions that's been introduced to either exempt Coalfields from smart scale or to even mandate that it be funded. Wisely, we've moved in a different direction, away from that approach to funding our roads, towards a much more reasonable, much more objective, much more transparent system of smart scale. This past session, there were bills to try yet again to do that, and as Mr. Secretary, you and your staff correctly pointed out, that would actually hurt the advocates of the project, because if they were exempt from smart scale, it means they couldn't get any state money for the project. The concerns then shifted to, or at least were expressed, that the real concern was that they were pursuing this federal earmark, and if they got that money, that somehow you all were going to take that money away and spend it on other projects. I went to every single committee, subcommittee, briefing, anything else on that bill, on that topic, and Mr. Secretary, you were clear throughout that your promise was that in no way, if there was money earmarked for that project, would it be taken and spent on any other project. And that's exactly what your letter said, that's what you promised, and that's what you've done, and it disturbs me greatly, and I just wanted to go publicly on the record and say that the recent press and the recent allegations that you somehow broke a promise are just flatly wrong. I appreciate your taking the high road on this and pointing to the facts. I think you've showed admirable restraint. And I just want to leave it at that and echo a concern Mr. Malbin mentioned yesterday. I hope that we're not going to backtrack and lose the progress that we've made in moving to a more objective transportation system. We don't always agree on every single project, but you've always been very upfront, very honest, true to your word, and this board and this administration have made enormous progress in developing a more objective, transparent system that is better for the taxpayers, it's better for our communities, it's better for our health, it's better for our environment. So I thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Pollard. Mr. Mayor, I did let Tripp go a little bit over. If there's anything else you'd like to add this morning, you're okay? Okay, in that, anyone else that would like to speak to the board this morning? Okay, just I'm going to do a couple things, a couple remarks. First of all, on the DC to RVA, very much understand the gravity and weight of the decision we're going to be making up there, and have tried to weigh, as we talked about yesterday, all the different constituents, and we'll try to craft something as best we can that'll be the least impactful, because I do recognize there's no guarantee these projects will be done anytime soon. So I would encourage everyone that if you can make that meeting again, to please come to that meeting. And then you know, we went through, and Mr. Pollard made a couple remarks regarding the some of the stuff that's going on in the press and stuff. We certainly recognize it's a gubernatorial election, and that's partly the play in this. But I do, I'll reiterate again, and I think it's going to be this board's responsibility to make sure that we keep getting the facts out, that we keep getting them out, and not being disrespectful, but I think there's nothing being disrespectful of pointing out when people are just factually incorrect. And it seems like in today's world, even at the national level, we've somehow forgotten that integrity and doing what you say you're going to do doesn't mean anything. I think it still means a lot. So I think that's, again, going to be the role of the CTB, to bring back into reality and facts what is going on, because if you don't, you're never going to solve the problems. And that's what we were doing for many, many years. It's just somehow saying it was always somebody else's fault when something didn't get done in transportation. So anyway, I appreciate Mr. Pollard's comments on that, but it's much more important than just this one incident. It's this whole idea of public confidence, and every time we do this, we just feed into this the public that VDOT and others are not doing what they should be, and that's just inaccurate. Not that we're always perfect, but I do believe that striving to do the best we have with the limited resources and being honest up front. And that's really what a lot of these reforms over the last 4 years have been about, trying to bring that in. So anyway, normally don't do that, but I just think I'm going to take a little privilege from my last couple of meetings. What they're going to do, ask me not to come back. So I think making sure that we take that high road and just keep staying out there with the facts will be very, very key to the continued success of this board. In fact, it's one of the things we'll talk about at the end of the action meeting today, your transportation conference role this afternoon. And one of the things I'm going to talk about is the role in your empowerment and how important that's going to be to delivering a transportation program in the Commonwealth of Virginia. So, okay, one more chance. Anybody else would like to address the board? Okay, seeing none, then we'll move on to the next action item, which is the approval of the minutes from September 20th, 2017. Is there a motion for approval? Second. Any comments or discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, minutes approved. All right, first up, we have Mr. Branko Vlacic. I get that right? Vlacic?
Close.
Oh, but you're not even him.
Tanvir's his
Tanvir, okay. All right, so you look just like him. So how are you this morning? Good morning.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Secretary, Commissioner, and board members. I have one decision brief in front of you today. It's an action on the commemorative naming of the bridge on Route 655, Tin Pot Run Lane, over Tin Pot Run in Fauquier County, located in Culpeper District, as the Sergeant Harold J. Davis U.S. Army Memorial Bridge.
Mr. Tom.
So moved.
Is there a second? Any comments or discussion? All those in favor, please rise. Motion passes. Thank you very much. Is this Ms. Keene coming up? Or yes, there she is. Nope?
Yes.
Yes, it is. Okay, Ms. Keene, good morning.
Hey, Mr. Secretary, Commissioner. One action item for you this morning. It's a limited access change for a project in Spotsylvania County at the interchange of I-95 and Route 17. The project will provide additional capacity, reduce congestion, and replace the structurally deficient bridge over I-95. The number of lanes on Route 17 will increase from 2 to 4. The design public hearing was held at Lee Hill Elementary School in August of 2017. The project was endorsed by the Board of Supervisors in September of 2017, and the limited access control change was approved by Federal Highway in a letter dated October 2nd. The total cost for this project is $20 million, and I'm requesting approval by the CTB for the limited access modification.
Mr. Connors.
To approve.
Second.
Second.
Any comments or discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? You have your limited access. Good morning. Ms. Pryor.
Secretary, members of the board, I have two items for you today. The first is the amendment of 7 projects to the 6-year improvement program. All of the projects are fully funded and being amended with funds that are not subject to smart scale, and I recommend your approval.
Motion.
Second.
A second. Any comments or discussion on the addition of projects? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Right? Ms. Pryor?
Second item is our normal monthly transfers of surplus funds from completed projects to existing or new projects, and I recommend your approval.
Motion? Was there a motion?
Motion.
Yeah, motion. Okay.
Second.
And a second. All right. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes.
Thank you.
I should have mentioned earlier when Ms. Keene was up, congratulations to VDOT. They put the press release out yesterday, going to actually complete those express lane extension, that 2 miles ahead of schedule. So again, another job well done by VDOT. I'm sure the motorists in that area will certainly appreciate it, even if it is on Halloween on that, Charlie. So again, congratulations to VDOT. Okay, next up is Ms. Brown.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I have 5 agenda items for your review today. Action item number 5 is a request for economic development access funds. This request was submitted by Henry County, located in the Salem district. This project is being requested under the bonded project option. The proposed project will provide a new road that will provide access to 3 parcels totaling approximately 17 acres within the Patriot Center at Beaver Creek. This particular business park has been very successful with a number of completed economic development access funded roads that serve a number of businesses. The county has estimated the cost of the project at $876,000, and Salem District has concurred in that estimate. Therefore, the maximum EDA program allocation of $650,000, that's $500,000 unmatched, and $150,000 matched is being recommended. The county will administer the project and will provide any remaining funding necessary to fully fund the project. The Virginia Economic Development Partnership is supportive of the county's plans for this development and the use of the EDA program funding for this purpose. We request your approval of the request for $650,000 in economic development access funds.
Rosen. Or second? Okay, comments or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? 1 opposed. Motion passes. Yep.
Action item number 6 is a request for economic development access funds. This request was submitted by Pulaski County, also located in the Salem district. This project is being requested under the bonded project option and will provide improvements to an existing roadway, International Boulevard, located off Route 100 north of the town of Dublin. The access will be provided to a new planned development on approximately 76 acres within the New River Valley Commerce Park. The county has estimated the cost of the project to be $500,000. The Salem District has concurred with the estimate. The county will be administering the project and will be responsible for any cost associated with the project over and above the allocation. Though the county has requested a bonded project, this access is actually specifically for an existing business, the Red Suns Farms facility. Red Sun Farms has plans to expand its operations, and that expansion is expected to result in 112 jobs and an investment of $3 million. The county wishes to initiate the project under the bonded concept so they can get the project started earlier to meet the traffic needs for the business, which is why they're pursuing it as a bonded project. The Virginia Economic Development Partnership is supportive of the county's plans for this development and the use of EDA program funds for this purpose. We request your approval of this request for $500,000 in economic development access funds.
Mr. Rosen, is there a second? Second. Comments or discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right. Ms. Brown, Ms. Brown, yes. I knew Mr. Rosen got a thing going on here. I just
Action item number 7 is a request for recreational access funds. This request was submitted by Franklin County, also in the Salem district. This proposed project will provide a new road to a proposed new recreational facilities within the county-owned 107-acre park. The county has estimated the cost of the project to be $350,000, and Salem District has concurred in that estimate. Therefore, a $300,000 allocation, which is $250,000 unmatched, which is the maximum, and $50,000 matched from the Recreational Access Fund is recommended. The county will administer the project. We have consulted with the Department of Conservation and Recreation staff and anticipate the director's support for access and designation of the proposed facilities as a public recreational area. We request your approval of this request for $300,000 in recreational access funds.
Rosen.
I know that party wants to move this, so I'm the second party's movement of it.
Is there a second?
My motion would be to pass it and reject the motion.
Hearing Mr. Rosen's first and Mr. Gozinski's second, any comments or discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed?
This isn't economic development, it's recreation.
That makes more sense, doesn't it?
Action item number 8 is another request for recreational access funds. This request was submitted by Westmoreland County, located in the Fredericksburg District. This proposed project will provide access to a new 60-acre recreational facility owned by the county. The project is estimated to cost approximately $762,000, so it exceeds our maximum allocation limit. Fredericksburg District has concurred in the estimate of the maximum allocation of $350,000, which would be $250,000 unmatched and $100,000 matched for road construction costs. We have consulted with the Department of Conservation and Recreation staff and anticipate the director's support for access and designation of the proposed facilities as a public recreational area. We request your approval of the request for $350,000 in recreational access funds.
Mr. Connors?
Move.
Any comments or discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Yep. I'm going to let you finish, and I got a couple questions for you, so let's do the next one here, Ms. Brown.
And the last one, action item number 9, is for the Scenic Highway Virginia Byway Program CTB policy update. This is primarily an update and cleanup of existing guidance that govern the Scenic Highway and Virginia Byway program. The board is authorized to designate roadways as scenic highways or Virginia byways in cooperation with the Department of Conservation and Recreation, DCR. Currently, we have a board resolution that established policy guidance for this program in 1973. At a later time, DCR and VDOT executed a memorandum of agreement dated July 6, 1995, that outlined the general responsibilities of each party in recommending scenic highways and Virginia byways to the CTB. That MOA outlines the procedures for designation based on the initial 1973 board resolution. This review and update was initiated based on a request from DCR to update the current 1995 agreement between the two agencies. We decided as part of that effort we should really take a look at the CTB policy and also update that. There have been no substantive changes in the program designation criteria since the 1973 resolution, but both the 1973 resolution and the 1995 memorandum of agreement are clearly outdated. In your board package, you do have a one-page summary that shows the comparison of the criteria for designating roadways as byway based on the 1973 resolution and the new proposed CTB policy. And that was really just intended to show that there really have not been any substantial changes in what it takes to qualify for being designated as a Virginia byway. We also included a copy of the new draft MOA, which includes notes indicating the consistency with the initial 1973 CTB policy resolution. This action will update the CTB policy, correct incorrect references, and get the policy in a format more consistent with current resolutions and CTB policies. It is somewhat streamlined since it does not include the procedures that are outlined in the memorandum of agreement. There is one item that is the 1973 board resolution that we are not recommending be carried forward in the new policy. The 1973 board resolution indicated that VDOT would inspect all byways on an annual basis. And that may have seemed realistic in 1973, but today there's over 3,500 miles of scenic byways, and that has not been feasible for some time. So we are not recommending carrying that particular provision forward. The 1973 resolution specified the annual inspection primarily to identify roads that should be de-designated and basically taken off the list of byways. There is still a process outlined if someone were to request that a road be de-designated, but we don't think that is required to have an annual inspection of every single route in order to make that determination. The new draft resolution will also authorize the commissioner to execute the new MOA with DCR as they have requested. We would ask for your approval of the draft resolution.
Did we have a briefing on this before the board?
No, we did not.
Okay, so I'm not going to vote on this today until we have a briefing, because and I got by me during the action item, I should have not let this come up because until we have a briefing, this is way too much to vote on. So let's put this on the agenda for December. Ms. Brown, you can come up and brief the board on this, and then we'll vote in January. Yes.
Secretary?
Yes, Mr. Kozinski.
Ms. Brown, when we come back in December, could you give us an idea on the board of, say, over the last 5 years, what's the average number of applicants for this program?
And
In December, you don't have to do it now, but in December.
we all come back to the board, and typically you're approving 1 to 2 designations, and they tend to be long, so it may cover 3 or 4 counties requests, because it typically takes the process, is typically 6 to 12 months to identify it, get all the buy-in from the localities, the review process.
Well, let's brief again. I think this is going to take a much deeper discussion in all this. And so I'm going to just, Carol, of course, I only got a couple more left, and I missed this, but I'm not having any votes that we're not briefed on for 30 days, unless there's an emergency. So we just need to, everybody, that's what we're going to do now. So that's what we'll do on that, Ms. Brown. The other two, what's the total dollar amount of the Economic Development Access Program and the Recreational Program?
Current balance on the Economic Development Access Program currently is $7.7 million after today's actions, and the recreational access is $5.5 million.
So how much is that a cumulative? In other words, Ms. Brown, what's the annual amount we get?
$5.5 million is allocated annually to the economic development, and $1.5 is allocated annually to recreational access.
They're cumulative. If we don't use them, they roll over?
Yes, that's how we have it.
Yeah, and is that a federal program or is that a state program?
It's a state program outlined in the code.
Yeah, on the code. So in the code. So
in a couple of years ago, we by budget action, we moved some of the recreational access funds to allow for improvements to the highway marker, the historic marker program, working with historic resources and with DCR, also to improve some of the, I'll call them the brown signs, the recreational access signs on our highways.
So really what I recall that, Charlie. So what I recall our actions really ought to be is just making sure they're designated correctly. And if my point is, I'm not sure that this isn't something we ought to not be controlling, but be a party to with people who know how to evaluate this a little differently than we do, like Virginia EDP and what we do. So you can't have a choice. The code requires this. But Nick, I just want to put this down as one of the things possibly is, in our legislative is to look at whether this is under the right area. Because I tend to agree. We spend a lot of time on this, and I know it's very popular, and it's not a lot of money, but it is. But I just think it's a giveaway. When I say a giveaway, from the standpoint of we're doing our job, Ms. Brooke, don't get me wrong. I'm not, because that's what it goes. But I think we ought to look at whether we ought to just be giving input on whether they do this or not versus us controlling the funds and that, taking money out of your other stuff.
How often do we sit here and deal with the extensions?
Yeah, I mean, and it's just so, and I'm not speaking, I'm just saying it may be a better way to do this. I'm not saying we get rid of the programs. But anyway, I just want to take a look at that, Nick. And Ms. Brown, you do an excellent job in that. But I just find that there might be a better way, and in getting to what I'd rather have VDOT concentrate on, but, we'll and leave the monies for something else, Charlie. So.
I think there are some opportunities. Ultimately, most of these roads become state highways, so we have a role in terms of ensuring that the design and construction meet our standards. But we do spend a lot of time regarding the eligibility portion of this program.
Yeah, and that stuff. So anyway, we are where we are, but I think that's one of the things that yes, Mr. Casper.
Secretary, can we go back to scenic byways? So can I ask you to also prepare just a list of roads that have been decertified?
There to date has not been any routes that have been decertified.
That's a good answer. Okay. Thank you.
Secretary?
Ms. Hines?
Just one issue that I will want to know more about in the briefing, which is right now this is all written in terms of vehicles, and there's a lot of interest in trails. And so how our trail policy fits with this is something I'm interested in.
I think it's a much bigger discussion, and I think, so we'll have Ms. Brown go through it all. We'll have a discussion on that, so. Is there any, Ms. Brown, is there any timing? Are you up against any laws, or we have to make a approval by?
DCR is just, they're anxious to get the new policy in place. That's
okay. All right. So, in fact, if you want to invite them to come and talk to us, that'd be great too. Make them part of the presentation, because like their input might be good and that stuff. So we'll do that on the December workshop. Have that on there. So, okay. Thank you, Ms. Brown. Morteza. Farajan. Mr. Farajan Morteza.
Morning.
Morning.
Today I have one item for you. It's about it's an action on resolution to recommend adoption of the 2017 PPTA implementation manual and guidelines by VDOT and DRPT. If you remember last month, I briefed you on the edits that we have made to the old version of guidelines that we have, which is the 2014 version. We went out and we asked for comments. We received 28 comments total. You should all have a package that I put on your desk today. It's basically the new version of the guidelines and a table that shows all the comments, the 28 comments that we have received and our responses. So just give you some highlights about what changes we have made to the guidelines compared to last time that I updated you. There are no major changes, but there are a couple of areas that we have improved the guidelines based on the comments that we have got. We received some comments from DRPT that basically they were asking to include transit elements of the project or any transit commitment in the analysis that we do as part of as part of our screening reports or public sector option analysis. We have included those already in the guidelines, so it's incorporated. We received comments from Southern Environmental Law Center about having some language in the guidelines that would basically set a goal for when procurement or RFP should be issued compared to the environmental study. Now we have a language there that says that we are not going to issue our final RFP until we have the procurement, we have the environmental document completed. There were some comments about public engagement. What we have done is we have gone and we have updated our public engagement guidelines, which is a separate document. That document is also on our website, the updated version, and most of the updates are based on best practices that we did as part of I-66 project. So we are trying to reflect some of public outreach and activities that we had as part of I-66 now in our guidelines. So those comments are addressed there. So those are some of the major comments that we received and some of the major updates that we had in the document. There are a couple of comments that we have not incorporated in the document because we feel that either they're not consistent with the language that we have in the code with PPTA, or it puts the department at a position that is not really what we want to be in terms of negotiation position that we want to have. For example, one of them is putting a language in the guidelines that says that we are not going to shortlist more than 3 people. Well, we think that on a case-by-case basis, we need to look at how many teams we should shortlist for a project. Sometimes maybe 4 teams may make more sense in terms of enhanced competition. So we wanted to retain that flexibility for the department to make that decision on a case-by-case basis. But with that, I think I have covered most of the high-level comments that were received, and we have tried to address. There's one comment that was made earlier today, and it was also submitted in writing, and that's about Commonwealth's engagement in the process. We do have at least 3 briefings for the Commonwealth. Commonwealth doesn't really have any obligation to take any action on in our process, except, of course, if project needs funding and you all need to allocate funding to the project, you need to vote on it and approve that funding for the project. In the resolution, I want to highlight a language that we have in the resolution that says that basically you are, as part of your resolution, you're saying that if a project does not follow the guidelines, you're not going to fund the project. And that's the last sentence in your resolution. So I just want to highlight that your input is still there.
Let me make let's make a comment on that before we go to vote. First of all, this is what we're recommending is Charlie as commissioner and Jennifer as director adopt these guidelines. This is not the board adopting them. This is taking, say, we believe Jennifer and Charlie should adopt them as part of their working and delivering P3s. But in terms, and Morteza was right, the Commonwealth, the CTB does have a role. First of all, you're representing on the steering committee in that. And of course, the most significant, and there are various briefings we have to give you, so that to the extent there is money needed, you ultimately have all the information before you vote on money needed. That was a negotiated, to be honest, position in how we get all the stakeholders involved, the legislature. Remember, they weren't involved at all. The CTB wasn't involved at all. And so the steering committee is where that all comes together. But the ultimate control you have is that you don't vote for the money if you don't want to put it on it. Now, I guess there is something that could fall through the cracks is if we had a P3 that didn't require any state investment in that. But of course, that's your role, is to allocate state resources. But even on the one where we didn't on 66, we still thought we were up front, and so you were fully briefed on that anyway. So I'm very appreciate Mr. Pollard's comments, very cognizant of I think the role of the CTB must be informed on this, have a role in it. And I think we've gotten, not that we couldn't review it some more in the future, but sort of got it pretty accurate in terms of this relationship, the legislature, and everybody understanding this, particularly in developing the public sector's option. I think that's really the key here. So I just wanted to address that. It's not something that we glossed over, but it is something that we talk with all the constituents with. And I really can envision, and also the direction that I have given the department is we're going to, if it's not proprietary, we're going to disclose everything to the steering committee and everybody else, because that's the way our new guidelines are in that. So just want to let you know this wasn't something that was glossed over. It's thought through, and quite, it's a policy we're doing here. So we're asking Charlie and Jennifer to accept. Obviously, that policy, if we need to adjust it, we can do so in the future too, as we, just like we have done on Smart Scale in that. So with that, is there a motion for approval?
Motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Now, any other comments or discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Thank you. Good job on that. Let me also point out to Mr. Farrajon, and he and his team were key in getting the I-66 TIFIA loan that was just approved, and dealing with that process. It was almost 8-9 months. So Morteza, John Lawson, the whole team at VDOT, I want to publicly acknowledge your hard work and efforts in working through that process. A great initiative for the Commonwealth of Virginia in delivering that program up there. We'll be in the process now of issuing the bonds. And so here in a few weeks, we'll be able to actually announce exactly the concession check. And the governor will be making that here in the next, sometime after middle of November, as they work through their final things. But I did want to acknowledge it. It was a very, very trying, I'll put it that way, process. And Morteza and his team and VDOT and John Lawson, they did a great job. So just want to acknowledge that. Yeah, that stuff. Okay. Next up is, well, speaking of that, Mr. Lawson.
Mr. Secretary, members of the board, before you today I have the resolution for seeking the approval of the 2017 Garvey issuance. The resolution you have before you does a number of things. It asks that you approve the Series 2017 in an amount not to exceed $250 million. It acknowledges that the bonds will be a limited obligation of the board and the Commonwealth. You are approving or authorizing the chairman to finalize the documents necessary to issue the bonds and to actually conduct the sale. You are approving in substantial final form the documents to support the sale, the POS, authorizing the chairman to finalize the OS once the sale is complete, and to take other further actions that be necessary to complete the issuance. In support of this sale, we are using Kutak Rock as bond counsel. We are using Prague as our financial advisors, and we will, obviously this has to go through Treasury Board approval, and we work closely with Treasury to conduct all of our sales. So with that, I seek your approval.
Motion by Mr. Casper, is there a second?
Second.
Any other discussion or comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, Mr. Lawson. Mr. Latimer. Mr. Latimer, I've noticed that every time you present, the Spiders lose. So I'm just kidding. He's a former Spider up here. So anyway, good to see you, Mr. Latimer.
Good to see you too, sir. Mr. Chairman and members of the board, I have one item for your consideration. That's action on a application for rail industrial access funds by Roanoke Steel. They applied for $450,000 in funds. They scored 64 points in our point system of 100 points. They would be shipping up to 2,000 cars annually in addition to what they ship today. It would bring 12 new jobs to the facility, which already employs 425 people, and the mode split would be 40%, so 40% of their shipments would now be by rail car, and staff recommends approval.
Mr. Rosen, is there a second?
Second.
Comments or discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, Mr. Latimer.
We got one truck.
Okay, Mr. Donahue.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I'm here today with the Smart Scale Policy Resolution. This resolution has been updated since yesterday's meeting.
You should be able to see it in your lockers, the updated resolution with the changes we talked about yesterday.
So if you want to, those changes are reflected on on pages 7. And then similarly, that is the change that Mr. Williams discussed yesterday. And then the change from Ms. Hines is reflected on page 3. And so, as we talked about, this is a result of an extensive public comment process as well as a review of the results of the first 2 rounds of Smart Scale. I believe there's general consensus to the policy positions in here. Again, I do think the staff will revisit this policy after round 3. This does recognize the changes that have been requested by many of the stakeholders as well as the board members, and we would move the board approve.
Mr. Casper was moved. Is there a second? Second. Any other comments or discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I think the first topic, on this that we've had with no discussion, so we're moving in the right direction there. It's good. So,
Mr. Nick by now.
Yeah, Mr. Moore. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir. Mr. Chairman and members of the board, good news here on 3 projects to consider for award. The first is in Northern Virginia District in Prince William County. Its UPC number is 109486, PR 15-076-236. It's a park and ride lot at I-66 and Route 15 in the northeast quadrant. We will recommend award. It's to Tavares Concrete Company. There were 5 bids. A bid amount is below the estimated construction cost, and it is a good value. I would like to note 2 things with this. It is 3 things. You will notice it is below the threshold, and we have been bringing design builds, whether they're to the board, whether they're below the threshold or not, for your approval. The second is this is a single-phase design build, which sometimes you see with these lower values. In other words, there's no short list. They do their qualifications and their proposal submission at the same time. The third issue I would like to, and this is a little painful for us, but we had to reject the low bidder because they were non-responsive in the qualifications. They made a simple mistake, but in the integrity of our process, so we could have had a better value, but it just didn't work, and it pains us a little to do that. But a good company here, Other was a good company, and we're getting good value here. So I'll recommend this for award.
Hans. Second by Mr. Rosen. Any comments or discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Mr. Moore, I know that, kudos to you for keeping the integrity in your process. Do you expect any type of contest or claim? Nothing.
No, sir. We're past that. We would not bring it if we were still in the protest. Good companies, good, but we're very careful in doing this because people put their heart and soul in these things and they try to compete. So we try to call this as, this one was clear, but sometimes we have to go through them over to make sure we're calling it right. And that doesn't happen that often, but it does occasionally. The second one that we have is in Hampton Roads District, City of Chesapeake, and in the Bowers Hill area that we talked about yesterday. The UPC is 106692. It's the high-rise bridge, project number 0064131-811, and I won't go through the rest, but contract number C0010669 to DB93. Sorry for all the numbers. I-64 widening and high-rise bridge phase 1. We talked about the scope yesterday. We recommend award. Granite, Parsons, Corman. Again, we had a standard 3 bidders in it, and $409 million, just under 410. This is very good value, and as we talked, some monies will be going back immediately, and we are excited about the bids that we got on this. So, recommend award.
Alvin.
A motion we approve.
Second. Any comments or discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right.
And the third project is designed bid build, and this was in Salem District, and it's on Route 11, Botetourt County, order number M21, and it's a bridge replacement. Orders Construction Company, and UPC 77300 and 77302. Number of bidders was 8, so again, good value, 5.3 million or 5.342 million. Estimate for construction was 5.897, almost 5.9, so good value, and again would recommend award and help us continue in improving the condition of our bridges.
Mr. Rosen. So moved. Is there a second? Any comments or discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
And that's all I had. Threshold items or below threshold are in your packet. Yes, sir.
Mr. Moore, please pass on again to your team about, again, the extension in Fredericksburg, and good report yesterday on the high-rise bridge, and just keep up the good work. Thank you.
Extension was, we had a real good team up there, Branch, and Charlie Warlich run that. So
great. Good work. Okay, is there any new business come before the board today? Okay, I've got one item. Just briefly want to let you know what to expect this afternoon during your CTB session. Certainly going to let you introduce yourselves. The purpose of this is for people to understand what you do, and obviously what districts you represent. So there'll be questions about how much time you spend outside of the meetings and what type of things you work on. I think a lot of people don't understand that type of commitment in there. Maybe ask you some of the things that are difficult in terms of doing your job, or the things that are obstacles in that, things that you like about doing the job in that. Certainly talk about what you see the biggest challenges are as the board going forward, your new role as being empowered and that. So those will be the type of questions that I'll ask, but we're certainly free to let you explore any topic that you want. My intention is you have billions of dollars that run through this board every year, and there's a lot of people that really don't understand what you do, and I think they need to. And as I said, I believe this board is going to be sort of the intelligence or the institutional knowledge of transportation in the Commonwealth, and really the continuity from administration to administration working with the General Assembly in that. So that's really what the purpose will be this afternoon. Probably we'll open it up to a few questions from the audience too in that. So just to give you an idea of what's going on, but appreciate all y'all participating. I think it'll be an informative session for the members here. Now, speaking of, first of all, any questions on that or any suggestions on doing anything different or anything? Okay. We start this afternoon at 1:30. As I mentioned, we were going to try to have the exhibition all open at 8 this morning, but it's probably going to be noon because of the water intrusion that we had overnight. But the conference will start at 1:30. The lunch will begin at noon, and I believe it's not in the exhibition hall. They had to move it around, but I'm sure you'll be told where it is. But lunch will be at noon. Then we'll have this afternoon, it's opening the color guard and all the opening ceremony. I'm going to talk just a few minutes about the reforms, but really the policies behind the reforms, you know, much more so because I'm sure on Wednesday night the governor's going to tout a lot about the reforms and of his administration. Then we have the agency heads, Charlie, you and Jennifer, and the others. We're going to start with a film where you guys have taped a little bit about yourselves and what you do. Then some general questions, you know, pretty much what's going on at your department, and then open it up to questions. Then the CTB session will happen after that. 5 o'clock, the exhibition hall opens. Significant entertainment at 5:30. Now 5 to 7 there's entertainment. Louis McGee, if you haven't heard Louis, he is a tremendous artist, and he'll be catering the tunes to the age of the participants. Let me put it that way. In terms of, you'll recognize that. So would encourage you to come out. And obviously also our exhibitors. Let them know, please, we appreciate them and what they've done, because without them, we wouldn't be having a conference on that. So that's what's going on today. And then I think tomorrow it's a morning session, couple of sessions, and then the afternoon activities. And then the governor here is tomorrow night. I believe he's around 6 or so. His town hall begins. And that should be, it'll be interactive. The governor will be just taking, you know, I'm sure he'll make opening remarks and then taking questions, which if you all know the governor, that'll be very entertaining and in his element, because he's been great for transportation in the Commonwealth. So, so anyway, that's what's going on. So any questions about any of that?
Mr. Chairman?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Mr.
Any word as to when we're going to have, we've got one vacant spot here.
Yep. Yes, what's happening is, and I'll just, it's been in the news here about it. The governor has said he's going to reappoint the current members that are here. As you know, Mr. Phelan decided he did not want to be up for reappointment. And so he wanted to announce them all at once. So that's why they haven't. So I don't, anybody that's up. And I think Mr. Rosen, he's announced that he's going to move to the district seat in that. And then, but here's the issue is there's a rural at-large seat that's open. And a letter was received by the governor's office a few months ago that stated that in Hampton Roads, when I became secretary, they lost a seat in Hampton Roads. And now there's just basically one representative, although Mr. Williams, you sort of go back and forth between Hampton Roads and Richmond, your connections, but basically one seat. So the governor is looking at putting a rural at-large in Hampton Roads. Now, that means it has to be in those counties that are considered rural in Hampton Roads, which are the Eastern Shore, Accomack, Northampton, but it's on the other side, Southampton, Surrey. So there have been people looking for candidates in there. I actually think that would be good for somebody from one of those areas. But that's what's going on, Mr. Whitworth, as to what it is. But at the end of the day, the governor, having said that, he reserves the right. He makes these appointments, and so he'll do whatever he sees fit. I've just pointed out what he has actually said publicly to date but that's what my understanding is going on in there. It's not a matter of anything other than trying to get a person. Now, I will tell you, the governor, while he does ask input, my only input is that we need to have some person that's dedicated to the job at hand. That's my, in other words, because that's one other reason I wanted to, this session this afternoon. I don't think people understand how much work y'all do outside of these two-day meetings. And so that's one of the only criteria I've had is that you're going to have somebody that's able to make that commitment and qualified, to be honest with you, in there. So
one follow-up on that. In our planning, we had considerable discussion about having a rework of our onboarding and orientation, and this, I think, would be a good opportunity for us to begin planning for that new person coming on board.
I could not agree more. I was mentioning a mentoring program, or I think that would be very beneficial for people coming on board, because and I have talked with the Secretary of the Commonwealth who vets these candidates and given her, and I know my Deputy Secretary Grinley Johnson has too, given her the criteria of what's needed. And so it's, that's part of what's going on, is finding somebody that's willing to make that commitment. Because this is no longer, I don't know if it ever was, but it's no longer a board where you show up at a meeting or so. As you know, you all make critical decisions in there. So I couldn't agree more, and I think that's one thing that I will put into the transition package of the new administration, is continuing that mentoring type of program. I mean, I could ask, Gary, as vice chair, would you like to, sort of take that on and get a couple guys to put together some suggestions? Would you be happy to do that? So why don't you do that, and you just reach out to a couple people, whoever you want here, to come up and for us to get that going. That's all right with you? Yeah, on that. So any other topics or discussion? Okay, well, thank you all very much. Look forward to seeing you. I know some of you got to leave because you have commitments, but those that will stay for the conference, I think we've got a great couple of days planned, and there's no more rain called for the rest of the week, at least through Friday. So it looks like the activities, golf tournament and all that is going on, and take advantage of it. I know these people worked real hard to put together a good program, and let me also thank Carol and her staff. This looks seamless, but they had a pretty sleepless night last night with all the water intrusion and everything going on. So thank all you guys for all you've done in getting this.
Can I also acknowledge the IT staff has been tremendous. I mean, they've really kind of upgraded from where we were when I first started, and I just wanted to acknowledge that team for taking care of us in that regard.
No, Mr. Brown, could not agree more. Appreciate it very much. In fact, I came in yesterday. There's loud music playing, and they were going to town. So, no, they were in there. So we really appreciate y'all's efforts in doing that. Okay, anything else? All right, we're adjourned. Thank you very much.